Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is a midweek pod. This is the Bedlam rivalry. Ooh, I gave away one of the questions for later. The Bedlam game. This is the preview pod for this. And we've got a special guest that's joining us. We're going to introduce him in just a minute. But first of all, I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
Lucas.
Jay.
And our special guest is Eli Letterman. He is the beat writer for the Tulsa World who covers the Sooners, and he's going to enlighten us about things that we don't possibly know. Welcome to the pod, Eli.
You're setting expectations high. I can't promise any of that.
Really. You said just a minute ago you were going to enlighten us, and you had all these secret information things. You were going
answers
to...
to fix
I've
this
got
team.
every single scoop.
Is it fixable?
The team is not fixable.
Is it close?
Is it close or fixable? I guess we'll get to that, won't we?
Oh, yes we will. Yes we will. Well, we got a lot to cover. It is Bedlam week, and the Cowboys come to town. So let's start with that question. I posed a question to our Twitter followers. I wanted to know if this is a rivalry. I know from one side of the state it is a rivalry. The Oklahoma State group has tried for decades to tell us that this is a rivalry. In their mind, this is definitely the biggest game of their year. This is the game that they play. They circle it on their calendar. It used to be for sure the game that if they'd win this game, that's all they cared about. I mean, literally back in the day, that's all they cared about. It has evolved differently. They have actually grown as a team, and they have loftier goals and ambitions. But at the same time, I think it's still a very important game for them. For us, I don't know. So let me pose it to you guys. The question is this a rivalry game from the perspective of both teams together in consideration of rivalries? What do you say?
I said no on this question. So
the options were, not that these are exhaustive or all the possible. They are exhaustive, but it's all the possibles. You could delineate more. But I said yes in years like this, yes in the past 20 years or so, yes always, or nope. And you're a nope?
I'm a nope. So again, I think with the overall record, the massively skewed record, at least me as a Sooner fan, I don't recognize this. I think a lot of people want to put it on the... When I think of rivalry, I think of Oklahoma, Texas, at least from my perspective. Maybe a homer take, but at the same time, I respect that team. I don't necessarily respect Oklahoma State. And if you even look up the definition of rivalry, competition for the same objective or for superiority in the same field. We've demonstrated massive superiority over the years. I don't think there's any question about that. Yeah, there was a game last year that we let slip away. We may see something different on Saturday where we may have another game in the L column, but at the same time, for me, this is not a rivalry. It's more of a big brother taking little brother behind the barn and showing them who's boss. So we'll see what happens.
Lucas, what do you think?
It's definitely big brother, little brother. What is the series? Is it 90, 19, and 9?
It's the most lopsided series in this level of football.
In college football.
In state rival, in state competition. It's the most lopsided.
That is not a rivalry.
We are 2 victories away from, I think, beating Nebraska versus Kansas in terms of the most times one team has beaten another.
And they don't play each other anymore on a regular basis.
Right.
And we probably only got this year and next year to finish this series. So it'd be nice to get the 91st and 92nd win to be on par with that. But it is definitely big brother, little brother. They have improved just in the Mike Gundy era, Les Miles, Mike Gundy era. They've gotten a lot better, even though Mike Gundy, what is his record? Is it
3?
Is like 3-15 or something like that? Or
yeah, it's remarkable. He's actually their
14.
winningest coach ever, and yet their record against, at least before last year, and I think even with that, his record against OU is worse than the overall Oklahoma State record against OU without him.
Percentage-wise,
winning-wise.
They've given us some good games.
No, they have.
I mean, the Tyreek Hill, we punted to him twice. That was a horrible decision. Mm-hmm. That's one of the 3 wins that he had.
Yeah.
Last year, you have the no call on the pass interference in the end zone at the very end of the game. That's a second win. So
and Lincoln Riley purposely losing the game.
That is true because he was headed to LSU/USC, and so really that's 2 of his 3 wins are really
it's remarkable. He could have
come down to one play on each game.
Could have beat us maybe 3 or 4 other times.
Yeah.
Not those times.
Right.
At least not, especially the Tyreek Hill one. That's the one that really doesn't.
So it's
make a
big
lot
brother,
of
little
sense.
brother. It's not a rivalry.
So you say not at all. Okay, Jay, what do you say?
I've actually struggled with this one because I understand what all you guys are saying, and I would agree that lopsided of win-loss category. Normally wouldn't be a rivalry, but I absolutely hate to lose this game. And the only other game I feel this way is Texas. So, I don't know. It's kind of strange. I'll say it's not, but it's close because a loss to them it hurts. It's bragging rights in the state, at work, friends, the whole nine. So it's a little painful.
That's the only thing that elevates this game over
Right.
a regular conference game, is because we live in the state of Oklahoma, so we all have friends that are Cowboy fans, and obviously a bunch of OU fans.
And they're all obnoxious.
We don't have we don't have a bunch of Kansas or Kansas State fans necessarily.
Right.
So
Right.
obviously in state you're going to have friendly discussion about that.
You run into these people all the time.
But bragging rights to me as an OU fan don't mean nearly as much
No,
as what it would
not.
mean to an Oklahoma State fan.
Well, that's always been the asymmetry of the deal. We're supposed to beat them. When they beat us, they get all the bragging rights in the world. When we beat them, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's like you beat your little sister playing basketball or something. It's like, well, big deal. You
Right.
feel like a man now. You're 5 years older than her. It's a weird asymmetry there for sure. But so Jay, you say
said
you
no.
say no.
Yep.
Eli, I want to go to you.
I'll
From an
preface this.
outsider looking in.
Yeah, what's the
give
thing?
them
So
your-
a neutral
lay it
observer,
out.
but I am a little brother.
Okay.
So that's one thing, and the other thing is I am an outsider, which might disqualify.
And you covered
me
the
from
Cowboys
start.
last year.
I did, so I've got a pretty good. I've spent a lot of time and money in Stillwater and time and money here. I think it is a rivalry, and not necessarily from a competitive standpoint, because you cannot argue with that all-time record. I mean, 97-19, something like that. Hard to argue with.
Yep.
But to the point about the bragging rights, yeah, it's a bigger deal when Oklahoma State wins, but the whole supremacy, getting to say Big Brother, is because of all those wins. And even if year to year the bragging rights aren't the same, that supremacy is there. And you guys, everyone referenced it. You value that.
Yeah.
So I see it there. And to me, it is a rivalry is not necessarily about the results on the field. It is the fact that it's an in-state game.
Yeah.
And it is those bragging rights and the talk back and forth. And I would also refer, if you ask everyone from Dewey Selman to J.C. Watts, Joe Washington, all the way back in the day to guys now, people who have played in it and who are still in it, and whether they've gone into coaching or they still live in this state, it's a rivalry to them, and those are the guys at least that I would side with on it. So I'm fully there, and I think it is one of the best rivalries in college football, and I think it's a shame that in 2-3 years' time it's probably not coming back.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, and it is interesting to hear those guys talk about it, and I could see putting a lot of credibility in what they have to say if they feel like it's a rivalry, then it gives it a lot of credence that it is a rivalry. So officially the record, like you said, is 90-19-7. I think I'd have to look. I think they took the first 7 or 8 years before they ever even beat us. The first game was 75-0, which is kind of indicative of the entire series and how it's been. So let me tell you how the listeners answered, and then or the Twitter followers. So the majority, or actually plurality, not a majority, yes, always. 42% said yes, it's always a rivalry. That is a lot of ignorant people. I don't believe that. Because it's not always. Like if you go back to 19...
There was a 17-year stretch, I think,
They didn't win.
that they didn't win until it was like 90... I want to say 95-ish that they won.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you about that.
They went from like
So it's 1976 when they tied for the Big 12 title.
Okay. Big 8 title.
Big 8 title, excuse me. Until 1995 when they beat us. Howard Schnellenberger was the coach. They beat us 12-0. So I'm in the stands, of course, because that was just in the early third of my streak. And you're noticing, it was such a messed up year. The Schnellenberger year was so screwed up. It went from just a high to just a low so fast. And nothing like this. Let me tell you something, little boy.
Does
Nothing
Red Bulls
like
allow
this.
water during practice?
100% nothing like this. And he also has not killed a player or nearly killed a player. So what you saw was in the stands these OSU fans peeling off their clothing to reveal their Oklahoma State stuff underneath. And their celebration, I actually felt like sorry for them. And I was happy for them that they were finally seeing a victory, because these are people that have probably been fans their whole life from the time that before they could remember. They'd never seen Oklahoma State win. They were so thrilled and so happy. But we lost 12-0. They actually put 12-0 on their medallions, their graduation medallions that year for the entire senior, not for football players, for the entire senior class at Oklahoma State. It was kind of sad because we were not a good football team. They got beat, they beat that year. And that was obviously the beginning of sort of an unwinding of the 90s that ended in the Blake era that was so ugly. But I
think it probably
a rivalry then.
I think it just speaks a lot. You know, it's great having an outsider perspective because we do put so much, you know,
of our own history,
and our own experiences into this game, and where, you know, I almost say it's not a rivalry because I don't want to give that fan base or that football team the time of day that it's worth, in my opinion.
I think that right there, though, this is telling us all.
And maybe that just completely undercuts my argument in the first place. But it's just hard. Like, if I'm again weighing the scales of trying to balance something between, and it's great. Maybe it's even more of an awesome thing as a college football fan where we have to pull ourselves out that we get 2 great games like Oklahoma State and Texas every year. And even though Oklahoma Texas is on a completely different level of what this game is, but you know, it is interesting to get an outside perspective and get someone who can say, you know, this is what it looks like from not only just someone who's covered the other side of this, but someone at a national level who can say, you know, it's one of the better games in college football. You know, I don't know if does Michigan and Michigan State, it's a quote-unquote rivalry, but does Michigan view it that way type of thing?
Yeah, it's similar to that, but it hasn't been as lopsided. In fact, that's an interesting one to bring up because Michigan has a lot more, I think, core support and has had more tradition, if you will. But it was up until 1997 when they tied Nebraska for the national title. Am I getting the dates right on that, or was it 96? Anyway, Michigan State
wasn't it Colorado? Wasn't it Michigan, Colorado?
It's one of those years.
Maybe it was one of those years.
91-ish?
Yeah. So Michigan State had won more national titles in the modern era of football. Most of Michigan's came before World War II, and yet they got this carryover effect. And so it's weird. You look at these teams like they've got. I think Michigan is still number 1 in total wins. Most of those wins come before a lot of people were playing football. Florida State was obviously well into just being an all-girls school at that time. And so it's these weird mismatches of history that we get this momentum rolling with them, and we forget that football changes. And so in that respect, my other possible answers, 33% thought yes in the past 20 years or so, 17% said nope, like you guys, and then 8% said yes in years like this. I copped out to yes in the past 20 years.
I used to care a lot more about this game. I don't know why. Like, I was thinking actually about this yesterday. There's a certain nostalgia that comes with this game, and I don't know if it's because I grew up with a family that was Oklahoma State, you know, heavy, and I was one of a couple of OU fans. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think this question boils down to how do we want to define rivalry, and it's. If it is a mutual hatred or disrespect for the other team, 100%, right? Like, I don't think there's any... Oklahoma State fans, I think, are more willing to say, I root for both teams when they're not playing for each other.
Right. Oklahoma fans not. Yeah.
I myself, I want to see Oklahoma State fail at every turn, and there's no questions asked.
Agreed.
Like, Oklahoma State plays Texas, I want Texas to win.
More times than not.
100%.
I would agree with that.
I root against
100%.
Texas 100% of the time.
No. But you're not rooting for Oklahoma State. You're rooting against
OSU
Texas.
is like in the background, and I don't. I mean,
No.
Here's the
I don't
only
want to win a
difference.
Big 12 title, but I really don't care if they go.
But
6-6
here's the difference
or
for me
9-3.
between the two. I can respect Texas where I can't respect Oklahoma State.
I never
Bingo.
respect Texas.
Well,
Bingo.
But
Ever.
I think you're choosing not to respect Texas but I
Because
think
you don't
would
like because you
respect
don't like
Texas
them.
because Texas is a traditional blue blood like school. They're a school with a lot of history and a lot of winning,
And success.
whereas Oklahoma State is not.
Yeah, they did have 1945.
That's right, 1945.
Don't forget about
they,
that.
you know, don't. Yeah,
There is a
Army might
sign.
That's true.
There is a sign back
Although
there.
the Army that
But
year
that's
was,
where I
was
get
way
to,
better.
that's where I get to the last 20 years. It's very different. So they have kind of graduated to where I'm going to have to admit it's a rivalry, and I really go back and forth between what you, Connor, and you, Eli, said about what defines a rivalry. You've got the traditional definition, Connor, that I think has a lot of weight. and that is when you're both playing for the same objectives. And just frankly, we have not been playing for the same objectives. And really not even in the last 20 years, but closer in the last 20 years have we been playing for those objectives. But at the same time, when you talk about a game that you hate to lose, something that gets your passions going on both sides, and it really is not just in football, but in all sports and all aspects. It's something that obviously helped by the fact that you're living and working and being around each other. It becomes a rivalrous situation. So it may not be in a strict sense, and that's where I get to an idea that there are tiers of rivalry. And so OU Texas is on the peak pinnacle tier of a rivalry. Those two teams have mattered. They're playing for the same type of objective. They
Michigan
have the same
State,
type
Ohio
of-
State.
It's
Or Michigan, Ohio State.
Ohio State.
Yep.
It's like the game. And that actually came up in a discussion with a friend of mine. And he was bringing that up, and we were comparing and contrasting. And I said, that is on a higher tier. That is something that we can't ever say Bedlam compares to, because the outcome of this game just doesn't mean that much compared to, at least historically, it hasn't. And really, in just but a handful of years has it even come close to meaning that much. It could mean a lot if one team knocks the other team out of a contention, but it was never these two teams are battling and whoever emerges victorious is going to the next level to compete for a championship.
Which last year was, right?
Last year was.
So that's one of the few cases where we did have to experience that and came out on the wrong side of it. So,
but I would tend to say that, in my opinion, it is rivalrous. It's just a lower tier rivalry. When you talked about history and our two top rivals, we played our second top rival in history this year, which is Nebraska. And it's sad to not see that Nebraska game, and that Nebraska game always meant something. When those two teams played at the end of the year, that was like Michigan, Ohio State. It actually maybe more so in the relevant years of the last 40.
And that was Thanksgiving weekend.
That was for everything.
Yeah.
That was for who was going to win the Big Eight and who was going to go on to the Orange Bowl and potentially compete for a national title. So it's a lower tier rivalry, but I would agree that it's a rivalry, at least recently. But we'll see. It's a rivalry that's probably ending. So
I hope our 5-5 team can figure it out.
Before we get to some questions for Eli, and I want to cover some of our normal kind of housekeeping and normal stuff that we cover. Before I get to things like our predictions, though, I want to talk about the Don Key Award. So the Don Key Award is the highest honor that a Sooner can earn, and this is the last home game of the year, so we're going to be awarding the Don Key award and trophy to a player or players. And I was going to get everyone's take on who they think.
And it is a senior, correct?
It is a senior. Yes, I think it had. They've always said it's a senior, and yes, because like Adrian Peterson, not that he necessarily was going to be in contention for it, but it couldn't be a guy who was clearly going to go early in the draft or something. It has to be a senior. The only time it's been awkward is when it's a guy who could come back for like a fifth year or something, but I don't think that's ever happened. So does everybody have a guess as to who they think that is going to win? Jay?
Sure.
You got a guess? All right. So I'm going to lay out Braden Willis is my guess. Eli, what do you
Mine
think?
as well.
Yeah, Connor?
Mine as well.
All right.
Same here. He's leader.
Jay, who do you think?
I'll go Broyles.
Wow.
That's
Being different.
That's
a
an
really good
underrated take.
That is a very good, that's a good
is-
outsider.
I mean, I thought long and hard about it.
That's good. It could be a split one. They've done splits in the past. It could definitely
know
be
who
a
won
split
last year?
between two. I think it was
Was it
Caleb
Pat
Kelly
Fields?
and Jeremiah Hall.
Jeremiah.
Look it up for us, Connor.
Well, where I'll give Jay credit is I think Justin Broyles catches a lot of hell from the fan base, at least on Twitter.
Yeah,
and we all know
Oh,
Twitter is
absolutely.
not
Maybe on this
real
podcast.
life. But as the guy who asked Brent earlier, I was the one who prompted Brent's whole impassioned defense of Justin Broyles, essentially saying, this is a team effort in terms of that was when they were 3-3 and things were looking bad. But one guy tends to be the one who's the lightning rod, and that was what set Brent off in terms of his defense of Justin Broyles. And I can say this, say what you want about him, or even his performance. And the fact is, he plays, I think, more snaps in the secondary than everyone but Woody Washington. So they see something, but he is absolutely that guy in terms of a leader and all that. So I think Braden Willis is probably the runaway pick. But as a number two, or if they split that ballot, Justin
I
Broyles
bet
is a
that
good
is
pick.
split. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I would imagine it's split. A good chance that it's split. They've split it so often. And
Yeah, they didn't used to.
no, they didn't used to.
I think
it used
in
to
the
be one
90s,
guy.
early 2000s, it was just one guy.
It was always just
in the
one
last
guy.
5 or 6 years, it seems like it's split.
Well, like I
a couple
said,
times.
in 99 and in 2000, they awarded it to the entire senior class because of everything those guys had been through. But I respected that, but I thought it was, let's do that, but let's not do that anymore, because it was kind of like, we need to choose somebody.
We had three winners last year.
3 winners.
Pat Fields, Jeremiah Hall, and Brian Mead.
Brian Mead. Oh, okay, interesting. Not
So
Caleb Kelly.
that's a good point. There could be a
Caleb Kelly might have won it the year before.
yeah,
because he
senior
came
class.
out
and the year before
17th
before
year.
that. Yeah.
yeah, right. Well, let's get some locks of the week in, because we just have a lot to brag about there. So
Yeah.
we'll get to the locks of the week.
The realest deal. Locks of the week.
Let's start with just recapping where we are so far through the season. We are in like week 12, and we as a group are 61 and 71.
Oh, we had a horrible week.
Yeah,
we did.
we are 46%.
Wow.
And so if you are scoring at home, you should have been betting against us, and you'd be making money even
So
after
we're really
the
going to
juice.
find out if Eli's the cooler or not.
Yeah.
Oh man.
The rumor is he's the
After the
cooler,
week.
and we'll find out. So we've got 2, unfortunately, that are tied for the lead, if you will. Jay and I are both 16 and 17, 48%. Jay had a tough week last week. I think it was
did.
0-3.
First 0-3.
First 0-3.
Oh, Jay, come on, buddy.
Who'd you have?
I don't know. I've had a lot of vodka since then. I think I had Iowa State.
We don't like to bring up bad memories.
Yeah, I don't know you had. I don't remember.
Hold on, you
So
want
I've
to
had a
know who
lot
you
of
had?
those.
Yeah, I'll
He
tell
had
you who you had.
LSU minus 3.5.
Yeah.
Iowa State,
half a
Iowa
point.
State minus 1.5, and Maryland
Maryland
plus
plus
10.
10.
Okay, Maryland was a horrible pick.
Well, they were
The
all
LSU,
bad.
no, the LSU one was a half point.
With
It was a
all-
half
You're right.
point.
You're right. You got half pointed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Connor is 15 and 18, and Lucas is 14 and 19, 45 and 42% respectively.
Brutal.
So let's, now that we got all the losing out of the way, let's get to how brilliant we're going to be. I'm going to start with Jay. Jay, who you got?
All right, I'm going to go with TCU.
Minus 2.5.
2.5. I'm going to go with Liberty.
It's minus 9.5.
Yep.
Over who?
Yeah, who's Liberty playing?
Liberty's playing Virginia Tech.
Yes.
Because I also have those.
That's right. It's great minds think alike.
9.5. Liberty minus 9.5.
This might be the most great minds think alike in the history of
UCLA.
Locks of the Week, guys. UCLA plus 1.5
Yep.
against the mighty Trojans
Yep.
and their worthless defense.
Who coaches them?
No one knows.
A name we
It's
do not
a
speak.
mystery.
Is that Clay Helton? Lane Kiffin?
No, I think it's Benedict
Pete
Arnold.
Carroll? I don't know.
So
Benedict.
yeah, that. I think we all. I was close to having UCLA myself as a lock of the week.
Big shock that you would pick against USC.
I've
For
done
the
really well
17th time
against
this
that.
season.
I've done really well picking. I've ducked
done all
and
right.
dived, and
It's done all right.
I've avoided the ones they didn't. Last week I picked Colorado. They didn't cover. They, of course, USC had to go for like a touchdown with 36 seconds to go for a
With the
backdoor
backup-
cover.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
That was pretty bad, but that's sort of par for the course with that group. But this week I stayed away from that. I've got Western Kentucky plus 5.5. I've got Air Force minus 21.5.
Western Kentucky's playing Auburn, right?
Western Kentucky is playing Auburn. Yeah, I should have said that.
Yeah.
So Western Kentucky's playing Auburn.
That's a big
I like
pick.
that.
I like that.
Yeah, plus 5.5. I am 67% against the spread when I pick Western Kentucky this year. So,
Okay.
excuse me, in Western Kentucky games. Sometimes I'm picking against them. They got Air Force. So Air Force is playing Colorado State, who's just really bad at football.
Jay Norvell.
They're giving up 21.5, and I think they should give up 30. And then I've got Washington State giving up 3.5 to Arizona, and I think Washington State easily covers that.
I like that
spread.
one.
Connor, who you got?
A couple overlaps here. I've got TCU minus 2.5 over Baylor. I think TCU's coming off a big week. I think they're going to keep it rolling. Washington State minus 3.5 over Arizona as well. Not a very good Arizona team, and I think there's going to be a letdown after the win over Oregon last week. And then I originally had Coastal. I think that game got canceled, so I ended up taking the Houston game Steve, what's that at? Like minus 6.5?
Plus 6.5.
Plus 6.5 over.
But we'll put you down for minus 6.5. Yeah. How you
plus
gonna do
6.5 over East Carolina. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah, East Carolina.
We'll have them play them. Yeah.
Yep.
I've got
Lucas, what do you got?
Liberty minus 9.5.
All right. So
I'm
you're
on
in
the same
agreement
line.
with Jay.
Yep. I've got Kansas State minus 7.5 against West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like that a lot better at 6.5, but you get what you get.
What are you gonna do? A teaser? What are you gonna
I
do?
mean, I wouldn't complain. And then I've
Give us
got
each $10. We'll give you a point.
I got Ole Miss on a bounce back minus 2.5
Wait,
at Arkansas.
Ole Miss. That's not
Ole
who you
Miss.
told me.
Why do you
This
always
is like
say that?
this is a common theme.
Yeah.
I
the
have
last 2
Ole Miss
weeks, man.
minus 2.5 against Arkansas. I only made 3 picks this week. Do not try to do this like I did last week.
All right. So I had Mississippi State, but you have Ole Miss.
So you got
okay.
that incorrect on your end.
All right. So you got Ole Miss minus 2.5.
Ole Miss minus 2.5 at Arkansas.
That's a good pick.
That's a big bounce back. For,
Well, we'll
the
find
Lane
out.
Kiffin bunch.
So Eli, let's get some locks of the week from you. Come
Got
on.
one for you guys.
One.
And
Wait. So are you going to give us $100 now? Yeah.
Oh
no,
yeah, no, I know.
You got to pay first. Yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah, no problem. I feel moderately good about this.
All
one.
right.
I'm taking Missouri 28.5 over New Mexico State.
Wow.
And
28
I'll
and a half.
put the little asterisk. The
Is that the
disclaimer there.
Lobos or?
It is the Lobos with Jerry Kill,
Oh.
former TCU interim head coach Jerry Kill,
Mm-hmm.
who is, I was reading yesterday, he has not yet signed his coaching contract there. It is some
Does that
weird-
factor into your locking? the week?
Yeah, that's a level of commitment I can bet against. Yeah.
All right.
Now, is he the guy that was the coach that had like a health issue on the sideline
Correct.
when he was in
Where is he?
Minnesota?
I think so.
What was the health condition? Do you remember?
You're like he passed out. He was shocked
Yeah.
by the gopher jumped out and he thought he saw a shadow. I don't know how it works.
He had the Sarkeesian effect, man.
Yeah.
A little bit too much to
So-
drink.
But that's my
That's
lock
your
right
lock of
there,
the week.
28.5.
All right,
like
20 and a half.
No homerism for Missouri in that aspect.
Well, here's the funny thing is I really didn't have time. I went to the University of Missouri, did not have time to become a fan because I covered them. And I was also there for 4 dismal
How would that not
years.
give you enough time to become a fan?
Because I
You're
covered...
watching them all the time.
journalistic integrity.
There we go.
Oh,
And also, and
right.
again, here's the other part. They had very little to root for out for those 4 years.
Was
So
it Josh Heupel era?
So Heupel was the first offensive coordinator I ever covered was one Josh Heupel,
All right.
and I would not have told you in 2016 that he'd be coaching.
I
this
could have told you
Tennessee
before
team.
that he sucked.
And I
Because I saw
And
him
yet now
here.
he doesn't.
Nah, we'll see.
No.
well, I don't think anyone was too sorry to see him leave when he left here
No.
and same
Was
with
DGB
Missouri.
there?
I just missed him, but
been like the year
he
after.
returned to Columbia a couple times while I was in town.
Just a party.
He enjoyed himself. But yeah, I never had a chance. I'd say now I'm a cynical observer of the University of Missouri
Okay.
and their athletic teams.
Interesting. So not a true Tiger all the way through.
50-50.
Interesting.
Tig.
Well, let's talk about our predictions for this game, and then I want to really put Eli on the hot seat and lightning round him with some questions. But we had some back and forth in this week when OU came out opened as a 5.5 point favorite. It exploded to 7. Now it's at 7.5 points. What does the betting market know that we don't know? Because in my mind, I think that unlike in a lot of cases, OU can't be the hot bet, and there can't be a lot of hot money. I mean, I know a lot of OU fans with a big variety there, and none of them are excited about what they see. I don't feel like any of them are opening up their pocketbook saying, yeah, I want to throw my money behind OU. Do they just know that Spencer Sanders is really hurt and he can't play? What is it that they see that we don't see? Because none of us really understand this. And we flirted with the idea that we were going to take Oklahoma State as a lock of the week. No one ended up doing it. It was interesting. But what is going on? What do they see that we don't see?
I don't know. It's weird to me too. Like Spencer Sanders did not look bad at the end of that Iowa State game last week. I mean, he's not running around doing a bunch of stuff with his legs, but from a quarterbacking perspective, like he looked more than serviceable. He looked a lot more serviceable than Gundy. He looked like he could do damage against just about anybody, especially in Oklahoma defense that we're seeing right now. So I have no idea. I don't know if it's I don't know. I really don't. Like I have no explanation. I have no explanation for the
Completely
line.
shocking to me when Jay texted that we were 5.5 point favorites.
I think I texted it.
Steve texted it. Yeah.
Okay,
He usually does.
I didn't know what the hell was going on because I honestly thought this would be a pick'em only because of quote unquote home field advantage.
Right.
Because OSU is obviously better than we are, if you ask me. I don't see any way that we're favored in this game, and then for this line to go up because people have bet the OU side of this. I mean, that surely can't be smart money. It's got to be idiots to just have money to burn.
But why would they burn it this way?
I have no idea.
What are they seeing? Like, even nationally, we're not like a hot dot. We're the opposite.
We're 5-5.
And it's all the talk is disappointment. Yeah, my math
Makes no
has
sense.
it. I have OU winning by 1.2 points. So I don't see 7. I don't see a
All I can
touchdown.
think of is maybe they just feel like we can't be snake bit this often in every game that we play in. And at some point we're not going to make stupid mistakes and we're going to play complimentary football at some point for a game.
Less face
and
masks,
this is the game.
less offsides.
So
That's
the-
all I can think of.
We're going to play our first
the
complete
pendulum
game since
swings
Nebraska.
theory of how this goes.
I don't know.
Eli,
I mean,
shed some light on this. Why are we 7.5
I don't know.
favorites?
Well, earlier in the year, I'm kind of with you is that Connors that I don't really know what this is. Vegas was slow on OU early in conference play. They seemed to not recognize that 3-game losing streak. They seemed to keep getting favored, and we were all wondering why. Mm-hmm. Why in week 12 they would be slow would be pretty baffling to me. I've got no idea. As far as the pendulum swinging back, I guess we'll wait and see for Saturday. But I think the empirical evidence to this point has been that the same mistakes that are getting made in week 4, 5, 6, 7 are getting made in
it's
10,
too
11,
far
12.
in. What reason would you have to believe they're going to get it corrected at this point to that degree? Like, I could see
Especially
some
with a starting
helping.
quarterback coming back on the other side of the football.
Right, even worse.
Who has proven that he can throw the ball around the field against decent defense.
I'm not even worried about that part of his game.
Which
We
part?
just can't handle scrambling quarterbacks.
Well,
I'm
that
worried
might
about
be
the
the
entire
secret,
part of
though.
this game.
If he can't run, if he can play and can't run, or if he can't play, then the explanation falls right into place for me. Otherwise, even if we come out against a Spencer Sanders who is a full-speed Spencer Sanders, and we happen to win this game by more than 7 points, I'm going to say that's just luck. I'm not going to say that Vegas had it figured out right. I'm going to believe that just things happen to work out in our favor. I just don't see it. And that's a homer take.
That's
right
the
there.
first. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard those words out of your mouth.
I just don't
It
see
sounds
it.
anything
Exactly.
like that.
Exactly. Not. Yeah. Some people
It just
always
ma-
think
it
we're
just
gonna
makes
lose.
it just makes no sense. Like
It really
just makes
doesn't.
it's very off. I'm a homer, and
Really?
I told you guys 3 weeks ago after we beat 3 weeks ago after we beat Iowa State. I said I'm locking OU no matter what. I'm not locking OU at -7.5.
I think
No
you were
way.
the only one of us who actually did pick Oklahoma against the spread.
Wow.
You did pick it, but it was probably a reluctant. Yeah, you were the only one.
True feelings come out.
Yeah.
You look like you're about to say something.
Well, I mean, even if Spencer Sanders can't run, which is absolutely the vulnerability in this OU defense, it's not like the secondary has been the Legion of Boom. If he can sit in that pocket and throw the ball, he's still, I would argue, the more dangerous quarterback in this game. The only way I see it being a touchdown difference is if Garrett Rangel or Gunnar Gundy is starting this game, and I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So my
You're with
hands
me.
are up on this.
the game in 2020, Sanders started, was completely ineffective for the first 4 or 5 series, something like that.
Yep.
They brought Shane Alworth in, and we completely dominated him that game. I think.
Yeah, that game.
It seems like they barely crossed the plus 40.
that was also Lincoln Riley's best offensively played called game that entire season. That game was.
But they didn't.
Unreal.
I don't think they moved the ball at all even with Sanders. And then once they made the switch, they were going nowhere.
Yeah, they tapped out in the second quarter.
Yeah, that was just one of the most comfortable Bedlam games I can remember in a while.
It was really an odd one from that
And
standpoint
then,
too.
but so this game, maybe Sanders is just so, he said post game,
I'm playing Bedlam.
I'm playing.
Said he wasn't
no
missing
doubt.
this one, yeah.
I'm not missing this one. Maybe after a couple series, if we can get some pressure, we knock him out of the game, and then, I mean, Gundy's not the answer. The Rangel, is that his name? They didn't play him last game because
He had a chest bruise,
they're trying
they
to
said.
preserve the four game.
To this point, I
no,
think
he
it's-
was
it's
injured last
smart.
game.
Rangel
He got
was?
knocked out.
Yeah, he had a
Did
chest bruise.
he played last game?
No,
No,
he didn't.
he was not. I think Gunnar Gundy started that, right?
Yeah, he had a. They
So
said
is he still under the 4 game
He
red
would
shirt
be. He would
situation?
be.
So maybe they throw him in there thinking he's the guy and
Cut him loose.
I don't know.
Please. By all means.
Well, I think that'd be.
Oh no, I'd rather play
Great.
Gundy. What are you talking about?
No, but
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
if I'm
but not
choosing between
Sanders.
either one of those guys or Sanders, I'm choosing either one of those guys.
Well, what we've struggled against is a running quarterback, and obviously Sanders brings that to the table. I think the defensive theory here would be, which we've talked about in prior games and prior pods, make the quarterback one-dimensional. That's always what you're trying to do, no matter what. And you're trying to make it the dimension you think you have a better chance of covering and eliminate the thing he's a bigger threat with. With Sanders, I think the bigger threat would be the mobility and a running quarterback. You'd want to do what you didn't do against Martinez and some others, and that's contain him, make him beat you with the pass, and then hope that you can cover enough and hopefully get enough pressure that you can flush him out, get him on the run, make him make bad decisions, or be inaccurate otherwise.
That's
so
why
that
I
you
worry
eliminate the
this year,
pass.
though, is like Spencer Sanders' arm has been gold. Like he's been throwing passes that he hasn't thrown in the past, and like has been making plays that he has not made.
It's
And
not
he's-
just 50-50 balls that they're used to throwing.
He's
at OSU.
actually. I mean, it's not even just that he's comfortable when he's in the pocket, but it's also when he is flushed, where he's actually making those throws that it's. A couple years ago in 2020, it's like, man, that's anybody's ball.
Yeah.
He's putting it on a dime, and that's more worrisome. And hopefully, maybe that's a little bit less than if he's injured or has a lingering injury or something that's a remnant of an injury where he's getting flushed and he's not as mobile and not making as good of a throw. But
More accurate.
his arm is just, it's like one off. I don't know if this would have happened in last offseason or the offseason before that. He'd been
Oh,
been
he'd be
talking
an
about
interception
Heisman. Like it's
machine.
been like been crazy. It's been,
What a
Well, he
turnaround.
probably wouldn't be there this season because he would have gone pro year early.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, the
So-
throws he's making now are also the ones he wouldn't make before, which are to the sideline. When he was under pressure,
He'd always sit in the
he
middle
would
of the
throw to
field.
the middle of the field, and that's where you'd see those 3 interception games from him. He's not doing that, and that was the only thing. No one disputes his talent in Stillwater, and having seen it up close. I mean, the Fiesta Bowl last year, it's lofty comparison, but this room might not like it. In the second half against Notre Dame last year, on that field in Arizona, he looked like Kyler Murray.
yeah.
And
Which is a huge
and he only
compliment
did
for
that
him.
for about a half because I also saw him once against Baylor and I saw him a second time against Baylor. This year, the throws he's making are not just the on the money ones downfield. They are I'm under pressure and I'm throwing to the sideline and getting the ball away. And that was the one all last year that just said like it wasn't a matter of the throws he was making into tight spaces. It was just live to fight another down essentially, and he's doing that. And that's where if he's just a pocket passer, that might be enough this week. 'Cause we saw Baylor come in here with a guy who couldn't run, but who could run was Squirrel Williams, who hadn't done anything all year, and they didn't need a running quarterback to run over the Sooners that day, and that would probably be the other concern here this week, even if Spencer Sanders can't run.
So do they have any other starters out? So they had some lingering injuries that were
on defense.
that were with quite a few guys out. Do they have anybody else? Are any of those
I don't know.
consistent? Anybody know?
They
Is
had, they had one guy opted out for the rest of the season.
Brendan Evers, yeah.
that
Right,
was
Evers, and then-
arguably
and
their
they're-
best defender.
Colin Oliver had a hell of a finish against Iowa State.
Their punter actually is done, and they've got the new
Yeah.
punter back who takes apparently like 6 steps to get a punt off. So maybe there's a chance to block one. I think talking to a guy at work who's an OSU fan seems to be well informed. He said that it's unknown about the several guys on defense if they're supposed to be back, but they don't know
Well,
for
if
sure.
it's a toss-up at this point, I mean, I'm going to expect them to play for this game.
I would,
So
yeah, agreed.
that's going to be the Spencer Sanders mentality.
So-
where I'm not going to miss this one.
Here's exposing my ignorance. Obviously, TCU has guaranteed themselves a spot in the Big 12 title game. Has K-State locked it up, or is it still
No.
open?
Nope.
So it
It's,
still could.
K-State or Texas, I think. Are the
Oh, it's
two.
OSU's out.
OSU
Well,
might
OSU's
have a
in the mix, I
weird
think.
Don't they have a
mathematical...
weird? That's what I was thinking. They have a weird chance
Take a lot.
of getting in
Take
there.
a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of
So-
like we did before Baylor.
Actually, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
this year, yeah.
6 different things had to happen, and we had to actually win out to make it.
Right. Well, we took that off the table.
Yeah.
We wanted that monkey off of our back. Well,
Now we're just praying for a bowl game like a bunch of saps.
I had a question related to that, and I noticed on the Scoop podcast they actually asked a similar question that I was going to ask you guys. So I'll ask it. Not that I want us to lose, but is there sort of a silver lining or a different shade of positive of if you do lose these next 2 games and don't make a bowl game, does that give you a potential, at least an opportunity there, to do some things you couldn't otherwise do? one of the things would be focus on the portal, focus on next year, but the other would be, I think, you clear the decks and you can question everything, because that's such a bad finish. If you go 5-7, you don't make a bowl game. You're the first losing season since 1998 at Oklahoma. You break the second longest streak in football in FBS football of winning seasons. Does that make it a little easier for Brent and company to question everything on the table and say, I'm not going to leave any stone unturned?
If they are already there, then there's something wrong with his coaching staff. I mean, it doesn't. Even if we finish 7-5, there's no difference in 5-7 and 7-5 as far as questioning every single thing about this program. You still have to question: is Ted Roof the guy you want running the defense? I don't know what Brent's play calling ability is, or not ability, but what his input is on playing every single down, making calls, or if it's Ted Roof. So that's something you need to question. Lebby, I was as established. I wasn't a big fan of him coming into this season. I'm still not there. I don't think he's good enough to be the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. From what I've seen this season, he hasn't adapted enough to what we have. I know that probably won't make a move.
So your question is,
I don't think they'll make a move on
should be questioned.
Either one of them.
But they should be questioned.
But to say that we have to go 5-7 before we raise questions about everything is crazy. With what's happened this far, even if we win both the next two games, you're still at the point of questioning everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The entire roster needs to be looked at. Portal, who wants to stay, who's really a part of this team, who has the heart for this team. I still look at everything usually from a recruiting lens first. I don't know if OU's the type of school for some reason that can keep together an elite class at 5-7. Some other schools get to use it as, hey, come in here, you can play right away and be part of the future and growing this program, yada yada. We've never seemed to have that ability to do that.
We haven't had the opportunity to do that either.
Fortunately, we haven't had that.
Thankfully,
neither is A&M this year. They're not going to be 5-7.
No, but I guess my point is we have a hard enough time getting top 10 classes with 10, 11 win seasons.
Yeah.
I don't know how a 5-win season would just but guarantee you
now, keep in mind, I'm not wishing for a 5-7 season, but I'm saying if you happen to end up being 5-7 and you don't make a bowl game, does that open up new opportunities in what you can do in the portal, what you can focus on? I know you give up the 15 practices, but is there some plus side to it?
But from you, and also
I think there's no plus side at all. Like I'm with Lucas. 7-5, you can still question everything.
I don't know about
top
no
to bottom.
plus side. I don't think I'd agree.
I think you can find a positive in any of it, and I think if you're looking in the lens of, if you're looking in that lens, like
you have to.
Like
if
I'm Lincoln Riley, and let's just say Caleb Williams goes out with and he's still here, and Caleb Williams goes out with an injury, and a week before the first game of the season that ends his season, and we end up with a backup that's a Dylan Gabriel or something similar. I think you're probably ending up with a similar result to what you have right now. And I think you have recruits that have a much different state of mind with the coaching staff that's in place with a Lincoln Riley and a Grinch and those types of guys than the solidified group that Brent Venables is at least positioning himself having, right? So I think from that, I don't think, to Steve's point earlier tonight at dinner, I don't think these recruits are looking at the wins and loss columns as their say-all, end-all, everything at the end of the day. I do get concerned with a couple of guys that may be on the fence who say they're committed, but nowadays you don't know. But at the end of the day, like I do see there is a silver lining. I don't want to go 5-7. I don't. But at the end of the day, if that is what happens, I do think it allows for some additional focus on not only internally. I don't think we're going to question the staff too much. I really don't. I think who we have is who we are going to have. I think Roof, if there's anybody, is going to have the most scrutiny. But it does make you look at your personnel, not only at the portal, but it allows you to look at those recruits that maybe are on the fence, and it allows you to reinstill those values that you are trying to solidify with your entire foundation of this program. So there's always going to be a positive to it. If there wasn't a positive to it, we're going to go 5-7 and the program's going to collapse. Like that, we will become Nebraska. And I don't foresee that happening.
I just wonder if it's not necessarily the end of the world if you can redirect efforts and say, well, it's bad to miss the 15 practices, but
And
we
maybe
can
that's where the
supplement
true
this
rebuilding happens.
with doing like rebuilding starts now in a different way, and maybe you can focus on the portal in a way. I don't know. It'd be a pretty unpleasant thing, but fortunately, we're not going to. At least 3 of us don't think so. So let's get to our predictions for this game. I will start us off. I believe OU's going to win 35-31. Does not cover the spread, but does emerge victorious. Connor, what do you think?
I've got us 38-31. Not quite covering, but winning the game.
I've got 38-34 Oklahoma State.
So 34-38 would be the way
I
I'd
think we lose this
turn
one.
that. Ugly.
I have 38-34 OU. I just can't.
Diametrically opposed
I just
to
can't
each
pick.
other.
I just can't pick Oklahoma State. I can't do it. So.
Eli, what do you think?
I've got 45-35 Oklahoma State.
Wow.
Yeah.
A 10
No
point
defense
win.
whatsoever.
No defense whatsoever.
Okay.
And my follow-up question on the last conversation would be: Will I see you guys at the Armed Forces Bowl if they get that 6th win? And
Is
and
that
they're
in
there?
Texas?
It is.
Or is
It's
it
at,
Fort
it's
Worth?
at TCU Stadium.
at TCU.
You may not see us there, but we will be rooting like we are in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm actually debating going if we made a bowl game.
When is that game?
Which you
That's December 22nd, pre-Christmas. Come on, that's
Yeah.
if you have us losing Oklahoma State, then you have
time.
us beating Texas Tech
It's right before Festivus.
to make
Correct.
to make the Armed Forces Bowl. Is that where we're lined up? There's no Memphis involved.
They're still kind of in everything, and OU will always have. It does somewhat come down to the records and the standings, but OU when
the
it
name.
in a place where they're
Branding.
not familiar of kicking around some of these lower level bowl games, their name will go far.
What are our options? Say if we win, do you have any idea what scenarios?
I
Like
mean,
if we win
base-
the next 2.
Scenarios, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what 7-5 does
Right.
versus 6-6. But if you look at a lot of the national bowl prognostications, you're talking guaranteed rate, which is the best destination. You're talking Phoenix in December. We'll take that. There's the Liberty Bowl. There's Armed Forces, and I saw one other this week. Oh man, what was it?
Probably something in Orlando.
Wasn't even the. I don't even think
Fisher
seven.
Price is my first bowl.
My first bowl game.
But those are what they're kicking around, and that's very. If the Alamo Bowl was unfamiliar territory, I don't know what this is.
Oh man,
Now.
It's,
Well, I don't think
it's that's what's so crazy is what we finished in 9 and we went to the Sun Bowl. It was like
I beat
it was
Andrew
like
Luck.
It's a 9-3
El
season.
Paso.
and that was
9-3 season.
that was an
playing
important
Stanford.
season, important bowl game for us there. We really wanted that. That was
Yeah.
Landry Jones pulled
Landry
that out.
Jones beat Andrew Luck in the Sun Bowl in El
Yeah.
Paso,
Yeah.
2009.
I guess the
And-
Russell Athletic Bowl was a lesser than, and we got kicked around by Clemson.
Whew, that was a bad one.
Well, that was a bad matchup too.
2015.
Because you're going up against a very emergent
we
talent.
were going against a really good defensive coordinator that game, guys.
Yes, we were.
So, no, the best.
Oh, the
defensive
best,
coordinator.
the best defensive
He
coordinator that
was
game.
the best. Yes, absolutely.
So
Clemson.
yeah, I think that the bowl game it's a really weird situation for OU depending on where they go, but almost no matter where they go because of the names you throw out there and thinking about who that opponent will be, you're going to be playing a team that is going to love to try and beat Oklahoma, whereas you got Oklahoma that is really disappointed to be in the position they're in, and they're using the bowl game just to get the practices. I think those young players will want to play and win, and we'll have to overwhelm whoever we play with just more raw talent on the field that maybe is maturing a little bit.
Well, you don't
versus
even
a
know
better
if
team.
you don't even know if Mims, Gray,
Yeah, opt out.
I would bet.
I mean-
I bet Mims opts out. Gray opts out.
Willis.
Harrison opts out. Willis, I bet plays. I
Willis
don't
sounded
know.
like he was looking forward to a bowl
I bet
game,
Willis
but
plays.
I don't know.
It,
I don't know, but I mean, at this point in the season, this is what your team is playing for.
right.
So, I mean, a lot of the guys who might opt out at 9-3, I don't know. I mean,
Maybe they don't
I
opt
say
out
that.
then.
I mean, I say that. You're talking about
If-
actual money. like,
Yeah,
at
they
that
got
point,
draft
but-
potential there, and so I don't
Still.
think they play because of that. And that
we'll see.
would just make sense. And
If
you're
we
not
made-
going to probably see that on the other side of the field.
Right.
The
If we
other
made
side of
the
the
Armed
field,
Forces
they
Bowl,
won't be players in that position.
We would actually be playing a U.S. military team, right?
Every project, I think I don't know if that is like 100%.
Air
I think
Force.
so, but Air Force is the one that
that
they-
would not
every
be
time I
good.
see them
I
projected
want to
there.
do that.
We haven't played Air Force since what? 2001?
Since we almost
2001.
no we didn't. We played them in 2008 or
That's-
2010, and almost got beat.
beat in Norman.
Really?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there another game against a military school? in
Army.
2019?
Army in
That was a little bit
2018.
dicey.
It went to
Overtime.
Kenneth Murray had
Extremely
28 tackles that
Yeah,
game.
Kenneth
Yeah,
Murray
I
set
mean,
a record for tackles. and
The
we
only
still
reason
almost
that'll
got
be
beat.
dicey again is if we have a defense again that can't stop them. The problem there
Yeah,
was
we have that now.
they had figured out. Yeah, but
No, that
the
was
difference
after
is
Alex Grinch ran a base defense.
didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to play
Yeah,
them.
we didn't even practice for the triple
We
option.
didn't exactly.
We just do
so
what we do.
I
That
think
was
that could be
Mike.
different.
That was Mike.
Mike?
Yeah, that was Mike.
No,
That was Mike.
Mike.
Yeah, it was.
Was Mike.
It was Mike.
Was
Was it
Mike.
really?
Yeah.
It was Mike, and we didn't change
Anything.
one thing from one
Nope.
run to the next.
Nope, we didn't.
Kenneth Murray got some cool pictures in his neck roll, though.
Yeah. Well, let's
Good
hope
day.
we don't repeat. Well, we repeat that performance and win. I guess that'd be okay.
Yeah,
Well, let's turn our focus to Eli and let's make him uncomfortable with some questions that things that are on our mind. So you're covering OU for the first time. This is your first season here in Oklahoma. What has been the most surprising thing about covering OU this year?
I mean, I'd say off the bat, probably, well, I think expectation setting would have been important in August. And the 3-0 start and that performance at Nebraska didn't help. And you're probably never going to get a first-year head coach to expectation set and say, hey, pump the brakes. But with that, so I won't say that where they are right now, even if I'm a little bit surprised, is that the surprising part to me, what's been fascinating. I spent last season in Stillwater. I'm not a native of Oklahoma. Has been, and I understand the history here, but is seeing what the tone was at 3-3. Most college towns, even high caliber football programs, 3 losses before mid-October is disappointing but not catastrophic. Here, it felt catastrophic. The world was burning down, and to me, that was a learning experience. I mean,
it still is.
and that's the thing is it's not. It seems ridiculous to me, but then you look at the year-by-year records and the fact that this program, I think since 1945, they've had six lost seasons. This doesn't happen here, and that was a little bit eye-opening and fascinating to kind of watch unfold. Is that again, I went to the University of Missouri 3-3. They're taking that in mid-October, and then you say, let's see what we can do the second.
We're halfway to bowl eligible.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
And so that's just, I think that everything about the University of Oklahoma and where it stands nationally and all that, but until you're here and until you see them doing things they don't do very often, you don't quite get the scope. So that was probably the most fascinating part to me, and it has been fascinating getting to watch right up close to a first season with Brent Venables. I mean, if you think about just the archetype here of former national champion defensive coordinator, probably one of the top 3 coordinators you could argue of all time with what he did at Clemson in college football.
And Oklahoma.
And
before
Oklahoma.
that, yeah.
What he's done the last 20 years before becoming a head coach. And now watching him in a really, what's become a dicey first season, I think this has been interesting. I think what happens from here will be even more fascinating.
That's I think a very insightful answer. So really dovetailing with that, what is OU's biggest shortcoming this year? Obviously not doing as well as the typical expectation, as the typical fan would want, but also as we came into this year, I don't think anyone really expected it to be a 5-5 season at some point. So what do you think OU's biggest shortcoming is?
It's probably worth setting the context, and I think we're learning this. You look at A&M or a lot of schools, Nebraska, you cannot rebuild through the portal like I think some people think or thought. We're learning all about the portal and its impacts, and the fact is they got gutted last offseason, and so that is, again, in that expectation setting phase, an important part here. But to me, what did Brent Venables come here to do, or what has he made his money on all his career? Is defense, right? And I think that the struggles of the defense and the lack of improvement in the defense would be the part you'd look at least in year one, and you can point fingers at Ted Roof, you can point fingers at the personnel, and both of those might be the case. Another heavy hand in that is Brent Venables, and so you'd at least look at that and say, at the very least, keep an eye on it, see what they do in the offseason. Do they make a change at defensive coordinator or change the setup? I mean, right now, Brent Venables I don't think can call every play as a head coach. It's just not feasible. So is there a better setup? Do they run it back with this setup? Do they hope to have better personnel? But the defense, and the run defense in particular, I think that's, if you look up and down the game logs of Big 12 play, they've just gotten run over by everyone but Iowa State. And that isn't saying a whole lot. Oklahoma State hasn't stopped the run for a month. Who did they have a great day against was Iowa State's run game. So I think the defense absolutely has to be where you start.
So do you, sorry, just real quick, just to kind of piggyback off that. So do you think that probably, and something I was talking to the guys about as we were walking to dinner tonight, is, you look at other coaches in college football or other new coaches. You look at a Sonny Dykes. You look at Dan Lanning.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, Brian Kelly. Notre Dame has
Freeman.
turned it around a bit. And I won't say the name to be spoken, but the guy in Southern California.
Who, Lincoln Riley?
Yeah. So, do you think that you mentioned being gutted, and I think we can all agree here in this forum, we've talked about it quite a bit, our lack of depth and our lack of consistent talent at each level of depth that we have. Do you think that plays the biggest role, and that's where the discrepancy is coming, where you see a lot of national pundits saying, you have all these other new coaches being successful, yet Brent Venables seems to be the one who can't figure it out or doesn't have the success that some of these other new guys are having in similar situations. You think that's probably the core of it, is just being gutted on top of an already not good defense?
You'd have to take a more scientific look at it, but I don't think any of those coaches took over a team that lost as much as Oklahoma did. LSU.
Yeah, and I meant to look at those numbers too. I'd be interested to see what those other teams lost to, either the
Well, I don't think
or even
LSU
graduation.
or Notre Dame probably hardly lost anything.
And
Be
USC,
would just be my
USC
guess.
only-
Nothing
USC
more than
only
general
added.
Right.
off-season churn.
Right.
Here you lost a 5-star quarterback.
2.
Yeah, 2 5-star
Fair
quarterbacks.
enough.
5-star quarterbacks, 5-star receiver,
You lost the guys to the draft too.
6
There's
NFL
no
All
guys.
your core defense
2
took the
5-star
draft.
receivers.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the defense? It was as much. I don't know about guys leaving for the portal, but the guys who went to the pros. That was the core of the
biggest one.
defense. Of a defense that, if we were sitting here last year, you guys probably had critiques of that defense too.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So they lost a lot, and so I think comparing this to what Brian Kelly inherited or even Marcus Freeman inherited is a bit apples to oranges.
Yep.
But I think there's what we can say for sure is that Brent Venables is really confident in what he's implementing, and he said it. He really dug in the middle part of this season of I've seen this for 20 years. I know what has worked. And there was even, you could debate if that was the right move, but the choice was to dig in and to say that this will work. I've seen it work. What we do works. And maybe with the current personnel, that's the case. Maybe we'll look up in 3 years and say, well, Brent was wrong. But the choice that was made, and I think that has been made, is that there's a philosophy, a system, all those things that he's seen work. And if you want to bet on those 20 years of experience, you do that and hope the players come. Or we will look up in 3 years when things are different here. And it's not, but I think that's the reality, is that they're dug in, and that's why I think you hear it in the recruiting sphere, you hear it in the guys who will be here beyond this year. Trust the process, all that. I think that's at least the attitude over there.
Is the attitude still there? So it's easy to think about that when it's the rah-rah time of the preseason and then when you're 3-0. But now that reality has set in that is not so pleasant, is that still there? Do they still see that focus for the future? Do they still have the same buy-in across the board?
I think so. I think this past offseason, spring, summer, especially, I just think it was the perfect storm. If Lincoln Riley leaves, you bring in, there's something of a homecoming and hearkening to the past, and everything through that September 3rd opener should probably be a lesson, generally speaking, in buying off-season hype, because it's really easy to build that when you haven't played a game. And then 3 games in, you have that performance at Nebraska, and you're thinking playoff. But I do believe the buy-in is still there. I don't think they've lost this team in any way. I think you can look south to College Station. Is that south?
Yeah.
That's south somewhat.
Yeah.
Not a geography major. Okay.
No. And I'm a Northeasterner, so I'm totally turned around here. But I think you can look elsewhere across the country and see some of that. I think this group is still bought in. I can't make promises about the next 2 games, but in terms of the long-term vision, the guys that are here, talking to kids in the recruiting class, there's a shared vision here, and I can't guarantee you it's the right one. It could be, setting it 3 years. Maybe this is in a different place. But there's a vision there, and you're, again, betting on Brent Venables and 20 or so years of elite coaching and a philosophy, and he's really taken everything from Bill Snyder to Bob Stoops to Dabo Swinney, and he's pouring it into this program. And I think for now, you've certainly got that buy-in.
So is the locker room still a healthy place?
From the sound of it, there's not a whole lot coming out about anything to the contrary. I think it's a precarious spot now. I'd wonder, not so much losing the locker room or splintered locker room, but if this weekend goes south, I'd wonder if
It's kind of a disinterest.
I'd wonder if they could rally to beat Texas Tech. Yeah. I think if you lose this one, just because it really does become, as I said before, the same things you're talking about in weeks 4, 5, and 6. I think it's human nature that by week 10, when things aren't flipping, and maybe the reality just is that this is a group that on offense can be really good, but still shoot itself in the foot, and that this defense will have its shortcomings. Maybe we know who they are, or maybe they'll surprise us Saturday. But I think that on the whole, this locker room isn't going to splinter. I think they've got a good foundation in place. I think you got to give a lot of credit, as much to this coaching staff, to guys like Braden Willis, Justin Broyles, Dylan Gabriel. They've been the connective tissue on this team. I would say Braden Willis, I'm going to write about him in a few weeks, maybe has been the perfect leader for the 2022 Sooners. This is not what he came back for. You could say, personally, he got told he needed to show he could catch passes. He's done that from an NFL perspective. He's gotten individually what he needs out of. This isn't what he hoped for.
No, he was looking for a rebuilding year.
He wanted to. He was hoping to come back for something big.
Yeah,
a
rebuilding but successful year on top of what he's already had. Right.
Yeah,
but this hasn't been that. But I think he has, as a leader. I mean, to a man, he was vocal in the locker room at halftime at TCU and at Texas. 2 days that I think were complete lost causes at that point in both games. He was the guy, and all the way through, he has been that guy. So they have those leaders. I think for whatever work Brent Venables and his staff have done, they owe a lot to your Braden Willis's, your Justin Broyles'.
Does he embody the sole mission early on here as much as anybody then? Is that fair to say?
I think so, and he would be tight with, I think, a lot of the guys now. I mean, you've got Caleb Kelly in there. That he fits that mold. I think he's got a pro future, but if he didn't...
You think he'll be back doing something?
I can't speak for him, but I think if he didn't have a pro future and he was a guy...
Or maybe after.
Maybe so. I think he fits that to a T.
That's good to hear. And I think we've seen that from the outside, looking in.
We've hailed him quite a bit.
We've hailed him for sure, and that's something that we've really respected.
The one bright spot of the whole team.
And it shouldn't go without saying that he has been their second most productive pass catcher too.
Absolutely.
Right? Every superlative you can have about the off the field and leadership, he's delivered on the field too. The other bright spot I'd say has been Eric Gray, who's been
we were hard on him early in the season. We thought Marcus Major was a better spot. We thought
Major did look like a better runner earlier in the season.
In the first 2 games, he did.
And then we even thought Barnes, what he showed flashes of, not necessarily the consistency, but flashes of the speed, the power, maybe not making the right blocks on, third downs maybe, but great. I mean, the last 5 games or so, we just need to shut up because he's the number one. And we were calling for him to be the backup essentially the first 4 or 5 games of the season, but he's proven that he's the guy consistently for the last 4 or 5 games. For sure.
And that is something that we have to give some respect to, or just humility, that we don't see everything and know everything. The coaching staff does. That said, obviously you could do a counterfactual where Marcus Major gets the reps and maybe he emerges as something great, but I'm not going to argue that's probably the case. I'm going to say
or stays healthy. He just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that they probably made the right call there with Gray. I think the thing that we saw that was bothersome or worrisome about Gray was that we've seen now for decades great running backs, world-class running backs, greatest running backs to ever play the football game at Oklahoma. And we hold every running back to that standard to some degree, fair or unfair, probably unfair. And we know that Gray, as good and productive as he's been this year, is not to the level of championship-level Oklahoma football running back as we've seen before. And we expect that when we see it, and so it's a little bit unfair. We want to see somebody that's going to have that type of breakaway performance, and he doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the size, doesn't have the things like, lo and behold, he's not one of the top 5 running backs in the history of the game, which is an unfair comparison to hold him to. And so I think that's a little bit of what we're grasping for, is to see somebody who can, at that position, contribute to what is championship level football. Now, in reality, we sit back and say, well, we're not championship caliber football as a team, and he's not more than adequate. He has been very good for this team, has done a lot, and probably been one of the top 2, as we're saying, productive elements in all of the offense for sure, and one of the most consistent.
I think you guys sent some poll over where it said Gray had been. There's some subjective poll out there saying Gray's been the second
2.
most valuable player offensively in the nation.
At any position.
At any position.
For his wins over...
I don't think that was subjective. I think it was analytical.
Oh, it was actually
it was an analytical.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, it was an
So,
analytical...
He was the number 2 on that list out of 5.
Yeah.
So that says a lot there, and
above the average or replacement
to
type
be that
player.
on a
And
on
we've
a
seen that
5-and-5
he's the number
5-and-5
2
team, so.
gain, yards before contact, which speaks more to the rest of the offensive line and the play
I
calling.
would say if you wanted to appoint like an assistant coach of the year in terms of how their unit has performed, gone totally. I guess this is the nature of an offensive line. When they play well, you don't talk about it. When they don't, you do.
It's easy.
The offensive line has Bill Bedenbaugh and that unit. They've stayed healthy, which is huge. They've been the furthest thing from the problem all year, and they've blocked well in the run for Eric Gray, who. It's interesting. I think Jeff Lebby, his offenses in the past have not relied on a single running back. I don't think he's had in the last 5 years a single 1,000-yard rusher. Here's Eric Gray.
Yeah.
But the offensive line really they've protected Dylan Gabriel well. They have been the least of the worries. So if you did want to give an assistant coach of the year award, you might look to Bill Bedenbaugh, which is not a shock to anybody.
Yeah, and I don't know if I don't know if it's something you noticed, but at least from our end, it seemed like once we got Wanye Morris back into the mix, that unit just completely became cohesive. And ironically enough, I think that was the Nebraska game, if I'm not mistaken. So and again, that all fell together at a perfect point where we were all on this very euphoric high, where it was like Wanye Morris is back. Eric Gray's running the ball like a world-class running back. Dylan Gabriel's throwing the ball like the quarterback we thought he was going to be, and the defense is playing lights out, even with a freshman who had to come in and play linebacker that game, and then everything kind of crashed and burned. But like you said, we haven't had any sort of critiques around the offensive line play in the past 10 weeks since. So
What do you think, Jay? You've always been a critic of offensive line. You always had a better eye for it.
Oh, I think I think the line is doing well. I mean, the numbers show that, so I'm still always critical. The amount of talent we have on the line, we still have a lot of issues, and it's not anywhere. We could be a victim, too, of Bedenbaugh's own success from some of the lines we have with Baker, where
Joe Moore award-winning.
It's just-
offensive line.
we're used to seeing better. Even though it's good, we're still used to seeing better.
Well, and
We're used to seeing. I want to get back to mauling people. Like
Trent
we're
Williams didn't walk in
creating,
that door, bro.
but I mean we're creating running lanes, and Gray does a really good one cut that picks up a whole bunch of extra yards.
You're used to seeing and would like to see just
But
running at will.
But you can
and-
also say we're extremely poor in short yard situations.
That's true.
So I mean there's still a lot of room for improvement. We do not explode off the football and move people.
I would agree.
When we need to move.
That's
people.
a
When
criticism.
Wildcat, we seem to pick up first downs, but let's not do that anymore.
That's true.
Yeah, I would say it's not a ideal or perfect offensive line, but it's definitely not the part that's the biggest weakness. I mean, when you look at receivers who are not getting open, or a quarterback who's not delivering to receivers, or when he does, they drop the ball, and the shortcomings we've had with at least depth at the running back position, the offensive line has been good, could look better, but it's all complementary football at that point. It's this guy makes that guy look better and that kind of stuff, and so
And it's slightly off topic, but one off season with Schmitty has
Not
been an
enough.
improvement, but you need 2, 3, 4 of those with your offensive linemen really beefing up to move people. And unfortunately, I mean, there is a world where we have one returning starter next year on the O-line.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, at least they'll have a second season in the weight room for
do
most
too.
of those kids.
I have a concern with the offensive line in the aspect of throwing lanes. I don't know if Bedenbaugh is deciding some of that stuff, because in the past you had shorter quarterbacks with Baker and Kyler, and we've had more batted balls this year than I feel like we've ever had. And Gabriel's not – he's, number one, bigger than Kyler, and he's probably maybe a smidge smaller than Baker. But we didn't have the batted ball issue under the other two quarterbacks with the previous administration offensive coordinator we had / head coach. And it seems like this year I don't know if it's a Levy diagramming situation, X's and O's, that doesn't produce the throwing lanes, or if it's the offensive line not hitting all their spots to create it, or Gabriel not moving in the pocket to where he needs to before the throws. But that's a major concern, because I can definitely look back at the games we've lost and seen 3 to 4 batted balls on key, 3rd and 3s, or even a couple 4th downs. We've had batted balls that didn't even get a chance to be caught, that really screwed us out of the opportunity to win games.
And again, I mean, it's funny, and it's funny having Eli here, and the conversations that we get to have is we are a very spoiled fan base. We're a very spoiled group of folks who have been extremely lucky to see, something like a Baker or a Kyler
and those lines, and those NFL caliber lines,
right? And even a Jalen Hurts when he was here, I think it's hilarious because I agree with all of this 100%. I want everything to be so much better, and to have a season like we're having, to be in a position to be as humbled as what we've been, and all of us, even we have a realist here. Coming and taking
so-called
coming and taking an 11-1 as his preseason prediction.
Idiotic.
That speaks volumes to Eli's point earlier. I hope we're in a position later where a lot of knee-jerk reactions are right now. Why is Brent Venables, like I brought up earlier, why is Brent Venables struggling compared to other people? And I think there's a multitude of reasons, but I hope it's the fact that Brent Venables is laying a foundation that we are building a strong house on, and it's going to put us over the edge, as opposed to maybe a Dan Lanning or a Brian Kelly or any of these other new guys who they might get them closer to the end goal, but at the end of the day, it's still going to come up, and maybe it hits once or twice, but it's not going to be a consistent world beater like we see a Nick Saban or even at this point a Kirby Smart or something like that. So I hope we're looking at more of that, and I hope this has just been a very, very, very strong reset to what we are used to because of the empty cabinets and the empty pantry that we have right now. Hope we reset, reload.
Well, to that point, let's talk about recruiting. We'll kind of close on that. So, Eli, you got a lot of insight into recruiting because you have these inside scoops of who's going to come. Now, tell us, what are you seeing and what are you hearing about recruiting? Obviously, recruiting is fundamental to building a strong foundation and a strong house upon it. So are we going to start seeing what it looks like to be a lot better talent level coming into the program in the coming years?
And are we going to be able to keep the guys that that we hope we keep?
Well, there you go. But if you want to talk about where this team is going to be next year, and then when they're in the SEC, it starts there, and it's Venables and this staff who have been reputed as really impressive recruiters. I think for whatever's happened on the field this year, they have got guys. You go down the list: Jay Valai, Miguel Chavis, even LaDamian Washington, who's the interim wide receivers coach. All of them. He brought in a staff that can recruit. And that is flat out. You can debate their coaching ability and all that, but the recruiting, they've really made impressions both in the state, nationally. They've done a good job of setting that foundation. It's shown in a recruiting class that I think right now sits at 6th in the country, if I'm not mistaken. I know if they'd I know the day they didn't get David Hicks, they would have gone up to number 2 if they'd gotten him.
Yep.
And if we do get him to flip, which is discussion, there's discussion that Hicks might flip.
He's here this weekend.
Then he might go. Again, we're at 2nd or 3rd or something. Which anything top 10 is phenomenal. I always like to say, if you're top 10 and you're getting the guys you truly want to get, that you truly can help excel in your program, that's as valuable as being number 1 with a bunch of 5 stars that are random.
But to that point, is that they've recruited really impressively in year 1, and
that's
if you want to look at correct where they stand right now, it's today's November 16th. It's 9:39.
Did they sign
PM.
today?
No. So as of right now, they've got a very impressive class, and that should be the things you want to look at. And going forward till December 21st, signing day, if you want to see what kind of trust there is in the process here and of where they're going, see how things go the next month. Because that is what's going to be important. The team you have here when they go to the SEC will be the team they're recruiting right now, and that is why having a good class is so important. It's why, I mean, David Hicks felt like almost a trajectory churning day, because he would have just skyrocketed this, but maybe that's not over. But these next few weeks, I mean, you're talking now about a 5-win team at the moment. Maybe they finish with 5 wins, maybe they have 7. But this is a different Oklahoma you're recruiting to, at least in the very, very current term. And so seeing who sticks around or seeing who flips, these will be defining weeks as far as what they can do.
Anybody that's right now on the radar that we need to be thinking about or listening for that you are engaged with, and who, in terms of players that are being recruited that maybe haven't committed yet, or anybody like that? Anybody interesting?
David Hicks would be the biggest one. If he were to flip, I mean, that would have been huge a month and a half ago when he went to committed to A&M, and it would be massive if they could get him to flip now. Another name is Khalil Barnes out of Georgia. He's got them in his top 3 with Clemson and Notre Dame. He's announcing on December 16th. I mean, he's not going to be he's not a Jackson Arnold. He's not even a PJ Adebawore or some of the really top-tier guys, but they're the guys that if you hear Brent Venables, Ted Roof, Jeff Levy talk lately about recruiting, that it's not always the guy with 5 stars. And you watch enough college football to know that stars only mean so much. Look, as far as Texas A&M this year, they keep coming up. That it's about the guys who can do exactly what they want them to do. And Brent Venables will talk about the 3-star guy who can move fast, hit hard, does everything he wants. What's more valuable, the guy with stars next to him or the guy that Brent Venables can work with? Right. I think for them it's about starting to stack classes, and it starts right here. And I don't know if 5-7 or 7-5 really impacts that, or if ultimately the guys they want here are the ones who will come either way and who see the process. Mm-hmm. And I think talking to some guys in the class, that's the case. They're not getting swayed by whether they won or lost at West Virginia over the weekend. They're seeing the long term. But there's obviously other guys who will get their heads turned, and I can tell you this time of year, it's not just Oklahoma. Every recruiting class in the country, if anyone sniffs any blood in the water, other programs, they're coming in for them.
Phone calls are being made.
And there's talented guys in this class, and that speaks to it. The fact that guys in this class are still hearing from big-time programs, from your Alabamas, from your Ohio States, should be telling of the caliber, but also maybe sets off some alarm bells of clock's ticking. If you're an OU fan, you want to get this to December 21st and pen to paper, because right now, there's a lot of time between now and then. A lot.
It's the day
can
before
change.
the Armed Forces Bowl, by the way. Let's lock them up.
Boy, a lot going on that week. Yeah.
Peyton Bowen's a big name too.
Yeah.
He's a 5-star safety, a
Notre
legit kind of safety that if you could pair him up with a Billy Bowman in the future, that could be the nastiest safety duo we've had in a long time. He's teammates with Jackson Arnold. And it's not just Peyton, he has a younger brother. Is it Eli?
Eli.
Yeah,
Bowen.
Eli.
Yep.
So,
Probably hits harder than me.
And they want to play together, right?
That I'm not sure.
they're brothers.
I think I've heard they want to play together. Yeah.
But they're Denton kids. Hopefully you can talk to mom and dad to, hey, just drive up the road and see your kids.
Just ride
play.
up.
And they've been out there. They've been out there to watch Jackson Arnold, but that's not the only thing they do when they go out there.
They took a helicopter out there a few weeks
Yeah.
ago, just straight up to watch Jackson Arnold play.
Big guy.
Him from Notre Dame, that'd be a big.
Well, I'm pretty sure he was in South Bend when
He's been wearing OU gloves in practice.
when they beat Clemson a couple weeks ago.
I saw him doing some interviews with some, might have been rivals, but he was literally wearing OU gloves in practice and maybe a wristband in a game or something like that. But he's committed to Notre Dame, but he's literally been wearing OU gear around town, which is strange.
I think his girlfriend
He's a troll.
maybe on the soccer team too or something like that.
That tends to be important.
Yeah.
Football, you mean?
I think Caleb Williams'
Women's
girlfriend was
football
at
team.
North Carolina, and we all thought he was going there for a second.
That's right. Yeah,
Not
that's
quite
true.
the Wisconsin farce, but pretty far,
Yeah.
pretty close to
Sometimes
it.
you don't take sand to the beach. But so let's just close with Eli. What are we not thinking about that we should be thinking about? What do you see behind the scenes there when you're behind that curtain?
Probably the long view. It's not getting caught up in this season because it has been disappointing, and For a lot, I don't think anybody would have predicted they'd be here or would have felt this was an adequate first season. But we're here now. Sooners are here now, and now it's what's moving forward and what's going to remain. I think there will be that evaluation at the end of the season. They'll look at that staff and wonder if, whether it's at the coordinator roles or even further down. I mean, those, you only have so many full-time assistant spots. And whether
do you have a gut feeling on any coordinators?
No gut feeling, at least not that I'm hearing yet, but I think a lot of people have their feelings about Ted Roof as a defensive coordinator. I think all that will be evaluated. And to Lucas's point earlier, it will not be evaluated any differently at 7-5 than 5-7. I think they're just going to have to take a hard look at year one, because if you any of us coming into a brand new job, there's what you think on December 6th, 2021, when Brent Venables comes in, he'll probably have a whole different viewpoint on December 6th, 2022. He'll look at the staff and wonder, and look at what were the right hires, what were the wrong ones, and that's on down the staff. I mean, he's got a support staff of it's a crazy number, and he'll look all the way down there, I think, and they'll have to just make some choices about those assistant roles, those coordinator roles, and what they want to be moving forward. I do think there's probably, if you take away the perception of missing a bowl game and that the nation's second longest streak and all that, those 15 practices could be really critical. I almost think they could take the 15 practices and then say the whole team's got COVID, not go to the game. But those practices, I think about moving forward with this program, that would be a really critical time for them to get the young guys developed. You'll have, the guys who are going to go pro or opt out are going to opt out. But that is a critical coaching time. And if this time next year we're talking about a team headed to the Big 12 title game or even things bigger, we might be looking back to December 2022 when they got those practices in, and that'll be the breeding ground for that. It could be, could not be, but
it was in '99 for
Yeah.
sure. They felt like in '99 getting to that Independence Bowl was a really, really big deal. First bowl game since did they go with
94?
Schnellenberger? 94 in the Cotton Bowl or Copper Bowl. Did they go with Schnellenberger? No, they didn't.
No.
So yeah, they felt like it was a really big deal there, first time after 4 years of sitting on the sidelines. So I could see that too. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Eli, thanks for being on the pod.
Yeah, man.
I really
Appreciate it.
enjoyed
I'll
it.
be
Liked
back.
your insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you are back. Yeah, I hope you're back for a lot. And we'll be back with the post-game pod after we beat the Cowboys. Until then, Boomer.
Sooners.